I bet you too have those nights where you're on eBay looking for a solution to a problem you don't really have. Whether you call it a niche interest in obscure hardware, consumer therapy, or perhaps financial irresponsibility is your decision. I happened to stumble upon this card, which solves a particular non-issue that I've been having for some time. So what's the problem, you may ask? Let me show you. Here is my motherboard. It's a Gigabyte B660 DS3H DDR4, as it says so on the motherboard, and for the CPU I'm using an Intel 12400. I then installed some RAM. I have 128 gigabytes of Trident C RGB memory, very cool, and then I needed storage. The motherboard has two M.2 slots on board, and I used the top one for a 4TB NVMe M.2 SSD, and I used the bottom one for a 2TB NVMe SSD. The board also have 5 onboard PCIe slots, the top one being rated at 16x electrical speed and the other 4 being rated at 1x electrical speed. And then needed networking. For the middle slot here, I'm using an Intel 1GB NIC that I put in there. And for this slot, I am using a 2-port 2.5GB Intel NIC also. It goes there. I then have the top PCIe slot free, I have the second most top PCIe slot 3, and I also have the bottom in PCIe slot 3. I then got myself a 2TB NVMe SSD, but as you can see, there are no more slots on the motherboard, so what do? Well, enter these adapter cards. They adapt PCIe 4X to a single M.2, so you can mount the SSD straight to the carrier board, and that can go in the bottom-most PCIe slot as so. Beautiful. I now have 2 PCIe slots left. In a prior video of mine, I took a SATA SSD that was out here, that's the one actually, and I replaced the SATA SSD by cloning it to a 250GB M.2 drive. I put this 250GB M.2 drive on another one of these carrier boards, like so, and put that in the second most top slot cover. The very top slot cover I need for the graphics card because I don't have an integrated iGPU, and now you see I'm all out of slots. Here's the problem though. I really want to free up one of these PCIe slots, so what do? Well, I could clone the 256GB boot NVMe SSD to another SATA SSD, but I don't want to run the cables. And that's where we enter SATA SSDs and the carrier board that you saw me purchase on eBay just before. So here's the plan. Mount the 256GB SATA SSD to the top slot of the carrier board. Then dismount the 256GB current boot drive and mount it in the bottom slot. This will be doing NVMe and this will be doing SATA by using the included port here. I can then take this adapter card out and hopefully not disturb any of the other cards that I beautifully have in there, and then this can be mounted once again. I can then use CloneZilla to clone the 256GB boot drive over to the 256GB SATA drive, and then I can take this drive completely out of the system. Perfect. Now there is a free space down here, and I can move this 2TB NVMe drive to this slot over here, allowing me to free up the bottommost converter card entirely. I still have the gigabit card, I still have the 2.5GB NIC, I'm still using the top X16 slot for the graphics card, but now the bottom card is completely free. Sounds easy, right? Let's do it. Shit. Now that we all agree that no matter how small a problem is, it can be solved by throwing hardware at it, I pressed the purchase button. I have to say, the purchase flow on eBay is impressive. My impulse control here is as weak as it is in the bar after 10 beers and one affirming look by an older lady who I would not look after if it was not for beer glasses. Anyways, last weekend aside, these cute envelopes arrived in my mailbox. One of them contains the card that I purchased. It includes a few mounting screws, the card itself, and of course a PCIe bracket. The bottom slot of the card will take an NVMe M.2 device all the way up to 22110 in length is supported, and the top slot will take an M.2 SATA drive. That's particularly neat because the power is routed through the PCIe fingers of the card itself, making me not have to rely on that ugly SATA pigtail that I was before. All in all, the resultant package is compact and efficient in its use of space, it's quiet in public spaces, and it can talk in multiple languages. Certainly not an American piece of hardware. The other package includes an unnecessarily niche item that I just had to have. It's a 10 cm short SATA cable. I have to admit it, when I bought it I thought the cable section of the cable would be the one to be 10 cm, but I see that the 10 cm length is with the connectors. It's very short indeed and probably won't work for my motherboard, but I bet I'll find a use case for it in the future. It's around this time I realized that there's only an included half-height PCIe bracket, even though the picture I purchased from clearly has a full-height one, which is funny. But I think I'll have an extra bracket length somewhere else that I can modify to make work. It's a good idea to keep track of the included screws. M.2 uses a screw size not commonly found anywhere else in regular computers, which makes them rare, and their size make them incredibly easy to lose. This old PCIe bracket from a 10 gig networking card just happens to fit the hole in the PCB for the new card, and even though mounting is wobbly and insecure, I think it'll work. If the spacing also happens to align perfectly. Fingers crossed. Let's now get some real work done. The next step is to bring the target VM host down for surgery. I didn't secure the top panel to the case last time I was in here, so disassembly is particularly easy. There's no great way of mounting this rear CPU fan, so it just sits there. It's easy to pull out. Here's the PCIe card that needs removal, and here is the current 256GB boot drive that we'll clone to SATA and mount in the top section of the new card. Remember that point I made about M.2 screws? I have some in my PC screw bin, but it's unsorted at this time. Should this channel ever get, say, 5,000 subscribers, I'll upload a 3-hour video of me sorting the bin screw by screw, section by section, by hand. I'm now mounting the current NVMe disk to the bottom slot and the SATA disk to the top one. This will allow me to power on the machine and clone one drive to another. Only problem here is that the janky bracket assembly I made upstairs turned out to not fit at all. Luckily for me though, the bracket from the old PCIe to M.2 adapter fits the new one perfectly, so I'll harvest that one for the new card. This of course leaves me without a bracket for the old card, but I don't really need it right now, and come on, how lucky do you have to be? The resultant card looks terrific. I really like the no thrills mixed hardware aesthetic, and I'll be sure to enjoy it as much as I can until I put back the top panel in just a few minutes. Oh, the things we do for our servers. As one could perhaps have foretold, the short SATA cable was nowhere near the length needed. I've swapped it to a regular length cable and hid the excess behind the motherboard. And will you look at that result? I absolutely love how this looks. As I need the PCIe X16 slot for a graphics card to temporarily get me vision into the server while cloning, I'm at the absolute PCIe capacity for this server. The bottom card will be freed up when all of this is over, but I wouldn't be surprised if I found a use for that slot very soon. I really wanted to use my Nano KVM to move the boot installation media over the network, but I have just been told by a nice commenter that this device is compromised. That's not great. I guess I'll be moving it here and doing anything manually. Right then, the computer is there. I have prepared an installation of Hiya's boot media that'll go to the back of the computer. We need a graphics card in the computer to actually be able to see anything, and then there is a HDMI cable over there that I'll get to put in just a second. Hey, it's me in post. Did you also just spot that I took off the wrong slot cover to insert the graphics card? Good job. So since the live version of me is deeply concentrated right now, I'll add that I'm just using the computer as a regular computer right now. I'll just be moving over the two dongles here to the front of the computer case. The astute viewer might also note that I am missing a power cable, which I'll get in a second. I have AC power on set to true, so as soon as we press the button, we should have power on. But we don't. Press the button. Ta-da! Memory turns on there. And in just a second we should have activity on the monitor as well. There's the boot beep. Very nice. The monitor has awoken. Great, we're in Clonezilla. Let's do EJ with font to RAM. Yeah, Clonezilla is still not very fun to look at, so let's just speed it up. Next through the thing, do device to device, and choose the 2 disks that you want to use. Then just press yes a couple of times and wait for the entire ordeal to be finished. In the meantime, take a look at this obscenely bright and very fast flashing LED on the drive, indicating that there is indeed a lot of activity during the cloning process. What a surprise! Now that the cloning process is over, I'm just sending the computer the power off signal, and when the countdown is finished, the computer should turn itself off. Magic. The old NVMe boot disk have now been cloned to the new SATA boot disk, so before making any significant other changes, I'll just be removing the old disk, plugging in only the new disk, and then booting the PC to check if everything boots as it's supposed to do. Normally there aren't any issues, but if there are, this is a great point in time to catch them. Once again, the LED from before flashes a whole lot during the booting process, which is to be expected, so I think everything will be great. If you weren't paranoid like me, this would be a time to stop. We are obviously booting into VMware and we can't be doing that without a great transfer. But I really want to make sure that the other NVMe disks are still there. The easiest way to do this is to connect the machine to network and then go to the VAMI interface to check them, but I don't have network right here, and I'll just enable the shell instead and go into the device list on the machine itself to check the other drives are there. As you can see, they are. Very good. With the VM host securely on its way to shutdown state, we can begin the very last step of this transfer process. Let's remove the bottom NVMe drive, take the drive itself out of its carrier board and mount it to the new drive sled. As I said before, this will free up the bottom PCIe slot for something else. Now, before you angrily go to the comments and tell me that the bottom PCIe slot is only at PCIe 1x mode, I know. All of the other non-top slots are in fact also, and that's just one of the curses you get from being on a consumer platform. While I am at the absolute limit of what this motherboard can supply me with, the applications that I'm running don't really need maximum storage throughput, rather they need maximum storage I/O. And input-output operations aren't as deeply affected by PCIe lane starvation than high throughput is. That's great for me. But if I were to make this machine again, I'd probably move to a Xeon or Epic server platform to get additional PCIe lanes. Everything is now finished and I can go ahead and rack the computer back in the rack once again. There are a few cables on the back that I just need to toy with, and then I can press the power button and everything should be good. Nice. After just a small bit of unreachability, it has now started to answer pings. We can then log into the system once again. And we should see all of the storage still. There are the 3 local NVMe's. There are the 12 SCSI disks, and if we go to devices, then we can also see the 250GB local SSD. The change is successful. Hiya viewer, the video that you just watched is now over, and I just want to say thank you for watching it. I'm still a very small creator, so I have time and the desire to answer all of your comments in the comment section, so if you want to say anything, please don't hesitate to write me something. I'll be looking forward to you. Bye!